prepare ourselves for this message, these ideas of practices of believing, seeing, and achieving, I invite us to take a few moments and move into a time of openness, opening ourselves up to this message, relaxing, and just this idea of contemplating these ideas. So if you haven't done so already, I invite you to get comfortable in your chairs, maybe move around a little bit, kind of wiggle, find that sweet spot. If there's a kink in your neck or back, just kind of stretch it a little bit. Now I invite us to take a deep, holy, collective breath together. Taking a deep breath in, maybe a little bit more, holding it, and releasing it, maybe with a sigh. Just a and now take another deeper breath this time, inhaling that luscious oxygen that we're so lovingly provided with, that prana, holding it for a moment, letting it infuse all your cells, and just release it. And as we release it, just release all the stuff that came before today. Maybe you have a few extra bags you want to set aside. And now let's just sync up with our own in each divine rhythm. Just nice, easy, relaxed breaths. Breathing in, holding it for a moment, and breathing out. Just as relaxed as the ocean, the waves, just breathing in, letting it roll out. Feeling ourselves move from the busyness of our head space into our center. With each breath sinking deeper more to our chest area. Feel that energy, the pulsing of the heart, circulating that oxygenated blood throughout our bodies. Feeling the energy between each other in this room, just like the cells in our body. Again, just breathing in, breathing out with your own natural rhythm, unhurried, unfettered. Letting yourself just open up in your mind, clear of thoughts, clear of emotions, just here and present to that still, small voice of spirit. Opening ourselves to these ideas of belief, of sight, and achievement. And in this sacred space, I invite you to take these words in now, in through your ears, let them run through your mind, let the vibrations move throughout your body. I can because I am. Say that once to yourselves internally. A beautiful internal voice you have, that voice that loves you, that voice that supports you. I can because I am. We take this idea and the words behind it now for a few moments into the silence, into the silence. I can because I am. into this present moment. I invite you to let that feeling of peace, those feelings of relaxation, and this idea that you can, because you already are. You are that essence of God. Let that stay with you as this afternoon moves through, as we move through the week, the month, and the year. So I invite you to stay connected with your breath. Begin to open your eyes, maybe wiggle your toes around, your fingers, and come back into the here and the now. So we give thanks for this time and these insights. Amen. How is everybody? I gotta bring the energy back a little bit, because sometimes I zone out and it's just, I can just go, hey, how's it going? Welcome. Well, again, so great to be here today. And it really brightens my morning to see all of you here. You know, back the last 4 years, or it's been over 4 years now, it's been 3 years since I was graduated and ordained from Urban Ministerial School, the same school Reverend Carroll went through, but going through the ministerial program. And there were 3 words that were presented to me during this time. And I've heard them before, because I was a true student, you know, before I came into ministry. But I didn't really understand what they meant. It took me a while to get that. You ever have something where you're reading spiritually or working spiritually, and you don't get it the first time you read it or hear it? And you're going, kind of scratching your head, going, I wonder what they mean by that. Well, that's what these 3 words were to me. And the 3 words are, life is consciousness. Life is consciousness. One of my favorite Unity ministers and authors throughout my spiritual studies since being in Unity, Eric Butterworth, this idea, this term, was a theme throughout all of his teachings and all of his writing. Particularly in his book, Spiritual Economics. I don't know if anybody's read that, but it was one of those books that impacted my life the minute I read it. And I immediately applied it into my job situation at the time and some of my living situations, and it immediately transformed it when I began applying these things after I shifted my thinking into my consciousness. So this idea of consciousness, I want to explore this just a little bit. Consciousness, from my understanding, is the foundation. It's a foundation made, as the Jafala state in their book, The Quest, from living bricks. And what are living bricks? Living bricks are our thoughts coupled with our emotions behind them. So we can make really strong bricks, really positive bricks. We can build this foundation of positive living, or we can build weak bricks filled with negative thoughts, negative emotions, and energy behind these. And our little foundation will kind of be skewed. Our foundation of our life will be like a leaning tower. So this idea of thoughts plus feeling equaling living bricks. Another way to view consciousness is like 2 adjoining rooms in a hotel, where we have pure God consciousness of the absolute, it's called, and that's one room. And you ever see an ensuite where it's got the door going into the other room? And that's our relative realm. That relative is like what we experience in earth right now. And we're constantly, between our physical life and our God life, so to speak, we're moving through these different areas, moving between them. And so Jesus, in his life, showed us how we can move through these areas and still hold on to that God consciousness. In the New American Bible, John chapter 3:21, it says, but whoever lives the truth comes to the light, so that his works may be clearly seen as in done by God, as in done in God. So when we practice our spirituality, when we work on it, when we do our meditation, we're doing our studies, we get into this area where we forge a connection with God. We live in that upper room. that absolute realm, that nice little suite. And sure, we have to exist in this other place, this place we call Earth, this place with all the stuff we have to deal with relationships and existing and eating and drinking and all the sensations that come with that. But we're able to stay balanced and grounded with that awareness and that knowledge and that power we have to shape our external world in this relative, in this little place we're at right now for 60, 80, 100 years, whatever our lifespan is. So again, when we live this truth, when we know this truth and live this truth, our works are clearly seen. They reflect that goodness of God. So there's three aspects I want to cover today. And that's believe, sight, see, and achieve. You ready to go into these? Yes?
Yes.
All right. Well, the first is belief. Believe, right? And that couples our power of faith. Belief is the key that opens the door to the realm of possibility. Simply being able to believe it can be done. Jesus said in Matthew 17:20, "For truly I tell you, if you have the faith the size of a grain of mustard seed, you will tell this mountain, move from here to there, and it will move." Nothing, absolutely nothing will be impossible for you. The smallest seed, the smallest kernel, the smallest idea. In that movie, there's a Star Wars movie called Empire Strikes Back. Anybody seen it? Anybody not seen it? This is a spoiler alert. So in the movie, there's a part where Luke is training with the little green guy, Yoda, and not the other guy, Grogu now. There's another little green guy that looks like Yoda, but he's training with Yoda on this planet Dagobah to be a Jedi Knight. And so he's getting these visions in his training, he's getting these visions of his friends being tortured on his behalf, and he's impulsive, good old Luke. He just likes to, I'm gonna just go do it. And Yoda's trying to talk him into staying there. Well, his only one problem, he can't just up and go. His X-Wing is buried, his spaceship is in this swamp, under a bunch of muck and everything else. So Yoda basically says to him, hey, if you want to go, get your ship out yourself. And so Luke gets up there, and that music starts, boom, 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 and he stretches out his hand, and he starts, and you can feel the ground shaking. You hear R2-D2 in the background beeping and bopping, and Yoda's looking at him like he just might do it. This is his test. And Luke is up there, and the ship starts, the water starts to bubble, and you can barely see the ship, and he's, and all of a sudden, and Luke goes off, pounding off into a little corner, slams himself down on the ground, and Yoda looks at him and says, try it again. And Luke says, you want the impossible. And Yoda basically says to him that nothing is impossible to him because the Force is his ally. And he should judge not by his size, but by his ally and his connection with his Force. And Luke's not buying any of this. So what does Yoda do as a good teacher? He cuts the words and he demonstrates this. And Yoda stretches out his hand, and the ship bubbles, and R2's making his noises again. And miraculously, the ship rises up with all the stuff hanging off of it. It floats gently. Yoda's not even breaking a sweat. And his little hand is raised, and the ship comes, and he lands the ship right in front of Luke. And Luke gets up, and his eyes are as big as saucers, and he says, I don't believe it. I don't believe it. And Yoda, like a true teacher, looks to him and says, that is why you fail. So the only way, the illustration of the story is the only way we can fail is if we don't believe. The only way we can truly fail is if we don't believe. Faith is the establishment of consciousness in the realm of possibility. It's building our home. It's building our foundation in that realm that all things, with God, all things are possible. Eric Butterworth, in his book, says the whole universe of innate substance is centered in you. There's nothing you can do to add to that or take away from it. And this centering, as far as God is concerned, is the same in all persons. That leads to the inescapable thought, shocking conclusion that the universe was no more centered in Jesus than it is in you. That's a heavy thought, right? Let that sink in for a minute. How many people go through this life in consciousness holding a tin cup under the Niagara of God's plenty? And that's a heck of an illustration, right? A little tin cup, and God's just wanting to pour all this good out on us, and we're showing up with a little Dixie cup. I like to think of a paper Dixie cup, even worse. So holding this paper Dixie cup under the Niagara of God's plenty, it's a small fry expectancy that usually manifests as a string-saving, make-do, can't-afford level of consciousness. It's a marginal living at best, and some people even prepare for the worst so they will not be disappointed. That's a heavy thought, too. So that was our first letter, belief and faith. And next we move on to seeing. Seeing is our spiritual vision, our power of imagination, as you call it. Seeing is believing. You ever heard that saying? Well, seeing is believing. But I invite you to rather think of believing as seeing today. Chris Tomlin, a noted Christian artist, in his song I Will Rise, has a verse in his song that says this: there's a day that's drawing near when this darkness breaks to light and the shadows disappear, and my faith shall be my eyes. My faith, the shadows disappear, and my faith shall be my eyes. True seeing is a flow of consciousness, flowing like a fountain from within, and thus where you are in your consciousness, again, those living bricks that we've constructed throughout our life and throughout our existence, has everything to do with what we see and experience. So when we see from the Christ consciousness, or seeing through God's eyes, we see beyond any appearances and outcomes that may be coming into our lives. This is the that of you, that is the likeness of God. This is your I amage. Eric Butterworth in his book said, having seen and felt the end, you have willed the means to the realization of the end. I want to read that again. Having seen and felt the end, you have willed the means to the realization of the end. Has anybody seen the first Ghostbusters movie? That's a long time ago, right? Back in the 80s? I'm dating myself here. So, spoiler alert, I'm kind of going to avoid the ending, but in the very end, they're all, the three of the Ghostbusters are there, and the evil person, I think it's Sigourney Weaver's character, says, choose your destroyer. And Bill Murray's character says, nobody think anything. Nobody think. Clear your minds. Do not think of anything. And all of a sudden they hear this. And Bill Murray looks at one of the Ghostbusters and he said, what did you think about? What did you thought about something? He said, I couldn't help it. I couldn't help it. It was just came into my head. It was the little song when I was a kid, the Stay Puft Marshmallow Man. He wouldn't hurt anybody. And next thing you know, you pan away to this giant marshmallow, and he's walking through New York City. And so these are the things we think about. We choose our own destroyer. We're the only ones that can think that through. Have you ever been proven wrong on something? For instance, You had a situation and you created this whole thing in your mind of how it was going to turn out. Maybe you had a conversation you were going to have with a friend and you were viewing it as not a pleasant conversation. And you ever that feeling like you worked yourself up over it, maybe all week, God, I tried this. They're going to hate me, they're going to turn out this way, I'm going to say this, and I have to feel like I have to say it, and they're going to hate me. And so you go to have the conversation, you worked yourself up over this, and guess what? Your friend responds 180 degrees differently than what you thought of. And they respond in a loving, kind, nurturing manner, and you're going, wow, I created this whole thing in my head and created all this stress in my body over a situation that never happened. Again, we make the choice. That's the living bricks. We choose our thoughts in any given situation. And the problem is, we choose those thoughts, but we couple them with emotions behind them. That's the kicker. And so realizing that when we're attaching these thoughts, we can switch those thoughts to positive thoughts and create positive emotions. We don't have to stay stuck in that negative loop. We can build our foundation strong and have a sense of faith and purpose. The whole universe of innate substance is centered in you, says Eric Butterworth. There's nothing you can do to add or take away from it, and this centering, so far as God is concerned, is the same in all persons. That leads to the inescapable thought, shocking conclusion, that the universe was no more centered in Jesus than it is in you. So now with this belief coupled with sight in faith, right? Faith is our eyes. We move on to achievement. In Unity, sometimes we like to call this demonstration. Demonstrating the truth. This is who we are. This is the nuts and bolts. Because we could just sit here and talk about all these great things and go, oh yeah, this is great, and I feel good and everything, but walking out those doors is where it counts. That's where the rubber meets the road, right? We were talking about world peace in our daily word. We are those instruments of peace. What do we say in our peace prayer? Let it begin with me, right? Let there be peace on earth, and let it begin with me. Whatever we desire, peace, prosperity, health, wholeness, we can go out these doors and affirm it not only for ourselves, but affirm and demonstrate it for others. So achieving, in this case, we're not talking about striving for something. Rather, achievement is just a natural byproduct of faithful understanding and vision. Seek first the kingdom, right? The words of Jesus, seek first the kingdom. That kingdom that we know is there, that all good, that pure potentiality of good, that is available to each and every one of us. Seek that first. Seek that connection with God first. Jesus demonstrated how we can operate from this consciousness with no effort. So in the great unity of all life, when you have a need, the answer is already moving on its way towards you. Before you can even formulate a desire in your mind, God is in you desiring. Before you have an urge to do something or to embark upon a project, there's already moving the Spirit within you, prompting you in that direction. So in his book, Spiritual Economics, Unity Minister Eric Butterworth states, the exciting message of truth is you can have all you desire. You can have it. It's a concept that raises a lot of false expectations and gives rise to many objections. You may say, I certainly have desired many things that have not been realized. But we've not really listened to our desires, our true desires, because in our consciousness too often centered in our sense appetites. What we're going to eat, where our next meal's coming from, how we're going to pay the rent, how we're going to pay the bills, how we can please this person. Too many of our thoughts are centered on this, and true desire is not to have, but to simply be. We are whole creatures in potential, and the true purpose of desire is to unfold that wholeness, to become the best versions of ourselves that we can be. When our faith is born of this desire, we gain vision, purpose, and inspiration. Miraculous accomplishments manifest in any experience we find ourselves in. So my friends, today as you leave these doors, go forth, believe, see, and achieve. Namaste.
Namaste.